All right, welcome to your Firebase tutorial video. This is my first new video for 2016-2017. We've been using Google spreadsheets for the last 3 years to serve as databases, but Firebase is incredible. It was just bought by Google, so their online cloud services are great, and we're going to use them from now on. So it's really fantastic. At this point, you should have finished exam project tutorial 2. And what we're looking to build is we're looking to take your exam, and you should have populated it with your content at this point. As you can see, mine has some code questions. And all this we covered in the functionality of the first few videos, which is great. But what we want to do by the end of this segment is we want to create it so that when the test is done, question 8 out of 8, it sends the data to our Firebase and then displays the average for all of our results just on the page. We're going to look at how to display some more fancy results in the third segment of this project. But all we're looking to do now is populate Firebase with responses. So this video is all about kind of getting to the point where you can use Firebase and then getting started. So let's begin. Your code should look somewhat like this. Again, I've added some additional pieces to make mine work the way it needs to. It's not a big deal if yours doesn't look exactly this way, but it works the same way. You have questions, you have answers, you have correct answers, and then you have answers that the user selected as they go, and all that is the same. So in our button clicked function, where we go to the next question and add one to question counter, what we want to do first is before we display the question answers and the question number, we want to check to see if the user's done with their test. So let's go ahead and put an if statement here and say if question counter is greater than or equal to the length of our question array. Mine's called question array 1, but whatever your array of questions is called, use that. All right, so if this is true, that means that the test is over because question counter is 8 and there's only 8 questions in the array, so the test is over. All right, so what we want to do is we want to prepare ourselves to output this data to Firebase. But before we do that, we have to kind of do a few things. So we're going to write a function called collect data. So variable collect data is a function. All right. So let's think about what we want to store in our database. Remember, the goal of this is so students can take the test and then see how they're doing compared with their classmates. So what we really want to do is we want to store, for each response of the test, we want to store if somebody got it right or wrong. That's kind of the goal here. So we have to take our selected answers. We're going to loop through selected answers. And we want to determine if each is correct. And then we want to generate an output, and we'll say the value is 1 if it's correct, 0 otherwise. That's what we want our output to look like, because we want to store kind of an array of response data in Firebase for each student response. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to write a for loop. Let's first create a variable to store our output. We'll say variable output. Is it an array? Sure, it can be an array. Is it an array? Yeah. No, it needs to be an object. So it could be an array, but Firebase actually uses objects as their method of storage. So that's what we're going to use too. Again, if you're in Apps 1, you don't need to know the why objects work yet, why they're better for this than an array. We'll talk about that in class. You probably have seen that discussion in class at this point, so you understand. I'm not going to cover it in this video, but by all means, let me know if you have questions. So output, instead of array, we'll call it object. Okay, so let's write our for loop. For variable I is 0, I needs to be less than selected answers dot length, and add 1 to I each time. All right, so how do we know if it's correct? Let's say the variable output value is 0, and we want to write an if statement to check if it's correct. So let's see, if selected answers at I, and we have selected answers storing the value of the response. So we need to check if the value I'm storing the correct answers as like the number choice, like the index of the choice in our answer array. So what we want to check is we want to check to see if that index is equal. So we want to say, maybe not selected answers, we want to say if answer array dot index of, if answer array at I, if answer array dot index of selected answers at I. So if the index of the selected answer at this point in the array is equal to the correct answers at I, then the question is correct, and we want to assign output value of 1. Oops. All right, so after this, we need to generate a key for the output object, and then put the output value in it. So we can say, let's say the variable, the output key, is going to just be question followed by the index I. And then finally, we need to take this value and this key and put it into input objects. So when you put variables into objects, last quarter we did this, output object dot, stock name equals blah, blah, blah. Okay, but when you want the name of the key to be a variable, for example, output key is a variable name, you can't do this. This doesn't work. You have to actually set it with square brackets like this. And then the rest of it's the same. All right, cool. So we've collected all the data. This is theoretically an array of questions and a value indicating whether they're right or wrong. And now what we need to do is we need to get Firebase ready to accept our data. So let's go into Firebase. I'm going to clear this, so don't worry about this right now. So when you go to firebase.google.com, you'll kind of be presented with an option to sign up and then create a project with a window like this. Go ahead and fill out your name. And then when it's done loading, you're kind of going to be brought to something like this. Okay, we're going to have a web app. So what's nice is that it actually generates all the code you need. And what you do is you take this code and you copy and paste it directly into your HTML file right above the link to your JavaScript. See that? Right above the link to your JavaScript. So that loads the Firebase JavaScript and then initializes the Firebase app according to the various keys that you have. And by the way, what I'm doing here, displaying these keys publicly in JavaScript, never do this ever. You don't want this to ever happen, but because we're just learning and we're testing this out, this is fine. Normally you'd have this on server side so that people can't see it. But again, for now, it's fine. All right, so hop back over to your JavaScript, and at the very top, include a variable declaration to the database. Variable database equals Firebase dot database. We need to do that so that we know that the database is just this name of the variable. That's all the smoke and mirrors I have for you. Okay, so we have all the code we need to get writing here, but we actually need to set some stuff up on the Firebase end first. So what you need to do is click on this database thing. And this is really cool. This shows you the tree structure of all your data. We'll be able to see more about this as we put data in, but this is cool. We'll have to come back to here. But first I need you to go to Rules. And in here, you're going to have something like, it'll be auth plus equals false. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, just erase it and write true. Okay, you need your rules to look like this. This means that it's publicly readable and writable. Again, terrible idea, but we're just learning for now, so it's fine. We don't want to have to deal with signing users up in this project. We might do a project on authentication later in the year, but for now we're just going to do this. All right, so the rules need to be read-write. That's neat. We also need to tell Firebase that we're going to be calling it from GitHub. Because Firebase is set up to only accept requests from domains that you specify. If you have your own domain that you're using, feel free to substitute what I'm about to show you for that. All right, but if you go to, let's see, is it auth? I have to remember where this is. Yeah, if you go to auth and then sign-in method, at the bottom it says OAuth redirect domains. And what you need to do is click add domain and type in github.io, the URL for GitHub pages, just like I have right here. This says anything that begins with github.io/whatever, it's going to accept, and we need to do that. The good news is, after that, you're ready to go. Isn't that cool? Yes, it's cool. Okay, so in our JavaScript function over here, where do we go? Collect data. We have our output object ready to go. And what we need to do is we need to write a function that sends this to the database. So we're going to go ahead and say send data, and we're going to include that output object as an argument, and we'll write that function here. This is output object. All right, so this function is going to take our output and send it to Firebase. So how do we do that? Luckily, the documentation is fantastic. So I'm clicking on Docs over here, and you're going to be brought to the Firebase, Docs home. And we need to go to the For Web Get Started guide. Very nice. How lovely. We're actually doing real-time database. So we have actually already done the Get Started piece here, and we want to go to Save Data. All right, so what we need to do is we need to do kind of like a basic write option. Okay, but we don't really want to overwrite what's in our database each time. So what we're going to do is we're going to use updating this specific fields thing. Okay, this kind of tells you a little bit about, if you want to read the documentation, you should to understand how this works. But think about what we need to do in our database. We need to be able to store all of the student responses. So if we have a responses object, all student responses go here. Right, but think about the structure of all those student responses. Instead of just being a string, it's going to be a bunch of other objects. Remember, we already generated one of those response objects in collect data. We know exactly what it looks like. So all we really need to do is tell Firebase that, all right, we have a new response coming to you. Generate a random key for us to use, because we don't care what the key is right now. So generate a random key, and then we're going to send you the data to put in. That's what we have to do. That's what this guide is actually telling you to do. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I'm going to delete this so it's blank, so it looks like what you see. All right, so here's what we need to do. The first thing is we need to do this. Get a new key, and we're not going to call them posts. We're going to call them something else. We're going to call them responses. So child responses. This just says firebase.database.ref, that's like the root of the database, .child, that searches the database for the child called responses. In this case, there is none, so it will create it for us. .push means we just want to add another thing to responses. So please create a new node is what it's called in the tree. .key means generate a random key for us. Pretty straightforward, yeah? Yes. If you didn't say yes at this point, please do so now so that the entire room knows you're weird. Thank you. Okay, the next piece is we need to take a little bit of this. So after we have the key, we want to write the new posts, I guess the new responses data to the database. So we're going to say updates is a blank object. Look at the structure here. Remember, this is an object, right? Updates is an object. It's got these curly braces. And look how they're doing this. Updates / post. That's just like saying .post. Instead of this, we want to change this to responses. dot the new key that we just got. So we want to say updates dot responses dot that new key is going to be equal to not post data, but this argument that we're trying to send. OP object, just like that. Totally neat. All right, the last thing we need to do is tell Firebase to do its thing. Firebase.database.ref.update using this blank updates object. Please update yourself. Now what update does is it says, all right, I'm going to take this object that's being sent, and I'm going to search the database that's already there to see if the value we're trying to put in exists already. If it does, we're going to replace it. Otherwise, we're just going to add it on. That's what update does. Totally cool. Okay, now what we have to do is we have to, I think it should work, so let's save it, let's upload it to GitHub, and then let's test it out. I'm actually going to pause the video because this is going to take a second. So we're uploading to GitHub, which you guys know how to do at this point. So I'm going to pause. It really took forever. I think I crashed GitHub when I uploaded my project. But anyway, see if this works, and it sends its stuff to Firebase. Let me make sure the console doesn't show any errors. No. So if everything goes according to plan, this should go ahead and send our data. Let's see, up to question 8 we want it to stop at. So this is the last one. I don't really know what that means, but let's see what happens over here. Oh, okay, looks like we got something going on. So here's our project. Remember, we created the responses node. When we asked it for a key, we said push onto the responses node, which means if it's there, push onto it, otherwise create it. Oopsie. And then if we expand it, there's a random key that it generated for us, and if we expand that, there's our questions. Looks like I got nothing right. Well, I hope that part is correct. Let's just make sure. If answer array dot index of, surely I got some right. So let's see, this, I'm going to get at least one question right. Let me just double check it to make sure this is actually true. This should be choice 2, and this should be choice 0. So I should absolutely get one question right at least. The good news is it's sending the data. That's important, but we want to make sure that it's actually checking to see if it's correct. Oh good, you can see that it adds another key onto here, which is nice. It's not checking to see if it's correct, unfortunately. So correct answers is the choice. Let's see, how am I doing this? Answer array dot index of selected answers at I is equal to correct answers at I. I don't think that's actually happening. I'm going to actually test this locally because we don't need to update this part or upload this part to GitHub. So I'm going to test this part. Oh no, it's opening up Safari. Got to be kidding me. It's a dagger. No. This is where my computer slows down and crawls. Okay, so let's see. I'm having it log all the important things here. So this is my local testing just to see what we did wrong. And that's fine. Oh, come on. This thing is killing me. Value is 1, include the method. Yeah, I mean, it should be fine. Let's see, that's logging selected answers at I. Let's see, answer array dot index of. Let's see if it's correctly getting the right index. I'm going to pause this while I figure this out. Array. Answer array is two-dimensional, so we have to say if answer array at I dot index of selected answers at I. Okay, so if I don't break GitHub this time, this should work correctly. Let's hope that that doesn't happen. All right, keep your fingers crossed. Let's not break GitHub. Uploading our JavaScript. It's going to process. It theoretically worked. Let's go back here. I want to make sure that that actually happened, because sometimes GitHub takes a second. Answer array at I, good, okay. So theoretically now, if I do 0, no, this was the right answer, this was the right answer, and then if I get random ones, Firebase should actually show 1s and 0s instead of telling me that I got everything wrong, which would, of course, be miserable. So let's see. Okay, it just added some. There you go, 1s and 0s. Congratulations, we did it. Okay, so that takes care of sending data to Firebase. But what if we want to read data from Firebase? Because remember, the goal is to get it so that we can read data and display it in some sort of fancy graphic. So that's what we're going to cover, at least the reading part, next video. Until then, get yourself up to this point, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.